Okay, I guess we can begin. Of course, welcome to Higashi Honganji Buddhist Temple's Mother's Day family service. And I'm Reverend Peter Hata. I'm going to be officiating the service today. And of course, we'll have a talk a little bit later by Mrs. Kathy Ikeda for the Dharma School. And as most of you know, those of you who are regulars, you know that right around now, when the service begins, we would be, fondly remembering that delicious Mother's Day breakfast that the dads had cooked for all the mothers in honor of the mothers. And so, unfortunately, we couldn't do that today. But, I'd like to state that if your partner, your significant other did not cook breakfast for you this morning, sorry, Diane, that at the very least, that you can enjoy a wonderful home-cooked meal, or if not home-cooked meal, take out from your favorite restaurant later in honor of Mother's Day. And I have a message here from Mr. David Ikeda, who says, unfortunately, of course, the pandemic made it impossible to have the Mother's Day breakfast at the temple, but he says, we look forward to serving the mothers at the breakfast next year, and we, appreciate all their efforts. So, yeah, I'm sure we'll all look forward to a more normal Mother's Day next year. But in the meantime, I think we can enjoy this Mother's Day also. So, for the ritual portion of this service, we'll begin with the Vandanati Sarana, the recitation of the three treasures. And then at the last moment, I realized that normally for our Mother's Day family service, we don't chant the Shoshinge, we chant the Tambutsuge. So it's on page 57 of the Red Service Book, but if you don't have one, I'm going to try to project it here on my screen here. Let me see if I can do this here. Okay, but first we'll begin with the Vandanati Sarana. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa buddham saranam gacchami dhammam saranam gacchami sangham saranam gacchami. Difficult is it to receive life in human form. Now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the Buddha Dharma. Now we hear it. If we do not receive awakening in the present life, then in what life can we hope to receive it? Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we, together as one, begin on the great path of enlightenment, holding in our hearts the supreme aspiration. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we, together as one, enter the storehouse of the Dharma and attain true wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we, together as one, uniting in harmony, strive to live for the enlightenment of all beings. The incomparable, deep, and profound Dharma is difficult to encounter, even through countless ages of kalpas. Now we are privileged to hear and receive it. Let us endeavor to thoroughly understand the true meaning of the Buddha Dharma. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Okay, now we will have the chanting of Tamutsuge. No, it does, no, it does, no, it does. Kogen Gigi Ijin Mugoku Nyoze Enmyo Muyo Tosha Nichigatsu Mani Shuko Enyo Kaishitsu Onte Yunyaku Jumoku Nyorai Yogen Chose Murin Shogaku Dai On Koru Jippo Kaimon Shojin Sanmai Chie Itoku Muryo Shushoke Ujin Taizen Shobu Hokai Gujin Jin no Kugo Gaite Mumyo Yokunu Seson Yomu Ninyo Shishi Jin Toku Muryo Kukun Kodai Chie Jinmyo Komyo Iso Shindo Daisen Ganga Sabu Saisho Ho Kado Shochi Mifuge Da Fusejo I Kaini Shoin Ze sanmai chi e ijo go se tokubu fugyo shigan isai kuku isa dai an keshi ubu yakusen nokuman muryo daisho shunyo go jakuyo isai shito shobu punyo gudo kensho fukyaku hinyo go jashobu sekai bufu kake mushu seto komyo shisho henshi shokoku Nyoze shojin ijin nanro ryoga sabu kokudo daiichi goshu kimyo dojo chose kokunyo naion ni futoso gato aimin doda isai jipporai shoshinne shoujo ito ga koku keraku annon kobu shinmyo ze ga shinsho otsugan ohiriki shosho yoku jippo se son chie muge Joryo shi son chi ga shingyo keryo shinshi shoku doku chu gagyo shojin ninju fuke nadabu Namadabu, 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 Namadabu. Ganni shikudoku Byodo seisai doho Shin Ojo An Rako. Get my cursor here. Okay. Okay, are we all together still? Let's see. So hopefully you're able to chant Tammuz together and see the sutra on Facebook. Let me see if I can see your. Were you all able to see the Tammuz together? Okay, on your Facebook? Let me know in your comment if you can. Well, you know, for our Mother's Day service, I asked our Dharma School teacher, Kathy Ikeda, if she would like to give a Dharma School talk. And so she very kindly agreed. And so let me see if I can find her here. So Kathy, let's see, you can turn your video on. Oh, there she is, okay. Okay, Kathy, I guess I'll turn it over to you and go ahead.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Kathy, there might be a delay, but yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
Okay, good morning and welcome to Dharma School Story Time. And I don't know how many children there are listening today, but I think I'm getting feedback. I need to close my.
Yeah, turn your Facebook off. Yeah.
Yeah, it's off.
Okay.
Okay. But today's a special day. If there are kids, there is a special day today. I'm sure you know what it is. It's Mother's Day. And it's time to think about our mothers and have, thank them for all the things that they do for us. And everything they do is for you. Unfortunately, my mother is not here because she passed away, but I think about her every day. But so I have a story that I wanted to share with you today, and it's called Love You Forever. And it's about a special mother as well, and her special grandchild. So I would like to share this book with you, and I hope you enjoy it. It's by Robert Munch, and the illustrations are by Sheila McGraw. And I'm going to try to hold up the picture so you can see the picture instead of my face. Okay, I have it here. Okay. A mother held her new baby and very slowly rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she held him, she sang, I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. The baby grew. He grew and he grew and he grew. He grew until he was 2 years old. All the books off the shelves, pulled all the food out of the refrigerator, and he took his mother's watch and flushed it down the toilet. Sometimes his mother would say, this kid is driving me crazy. But at night, when the 2-year-old was quiet, she opened the door to his room, crawled across the floor, looked up over the side of his bed, and if he was really asleep, she picked him up and rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she rocked him, she sang, "I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be." The little boy grew. He grew and he grew and he grew. He grew until he was 9 years old, and he never wanted to come in for dinner. He never wanted to take a bath, and when grandma visited, he always said bad words. Sometimes his mother wanted to sell him to the zoo. But at nighttime, when he was asleep, the mother quietly opened the door to his room, crawled across the floor, and looked up over the side of the bed. If he was really asleep, she picked up that 9-year-old boy and rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she rocked him, she sang, "I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be." Boy grew. He grew and he grew and he grew. He grew until he was a teenager. He had strange friends and he wore strange clothes and he listened to strange music. Sometimes his mother felt like she was in a zoo. But at nighttime, when that teenager was asleep, the mother opened the door to his room, crawled across the floor, and looked up over the side of the bed. If he was really asleep, she picked up that great big boy and rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. While she rocked him, she sang, "I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be." That teenager grew, and he grew, and he grew, and he grew. He grew until he was a grown-up man. He left home and got a house across town. But sometimes, on dark nights, the mother got in her car and drove across town. If all the lights in her son's house were out, she opened his bedroom door, crawled across the floor, and looked over the side of his bed. If that great big man was really asleep, she picked him up and rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she rocked him, she sang, "I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be." Well, that mother, she got older. She got older and older and older. And one day she called up her son and said, "You'd better come and visit me because I'm very old and sick." So her son came to see her. When he came in the door, she tried to sing the song. She sang, "I'll forever, I'll like you for always." But she couldn't finish because she was too old and sick. The son went to his mother. He picked her up and rocked her back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And he sang this song. I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my mommy you'll be. When the son came home that night, he stood for a long time at the top of the stairs. Then he went into the room where his very new baby daughter was sleeping. He picked her up in his arms and very slowly rocked her back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while he rocked her, he sang, I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. And that's the end of the story. This is such a wonderful story about how a mother loves her son and her son loves the mother. And today's a great day, Mother's Day, to think about it. And I've read this story so many times, but I always get choked up. I always start to tear up because it's such a good message. And I hope you enjoyed the story. And on Mother's Day, maybe you can say to your mom, sing to your mom, I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my mommy you'll be. Maybe you can say that to your mom. I miss seeing you at the temple. No one can go to the temple, but hopefully we'll be there someday. It'll be so good to give each other hugs and to have our morning stories for Dharma School. And to the mothers, all of you out there, have a great Mother's Day. Okay? See ya. Bye.
Okay, thank you very much, Kathy. Let's see. Yeah, that was wonderful. Take a second here myself. I got a little verklempt myself. So, wow, that's a great story. Let me see. So, normally, in our Mother's Day family service, we have one of our lay members gives the talk about their mother. And, as today's service approached, we haven't quite gotten the technology together to enable that. Although today it was very great that we're able to have Mrs. Kathy Ikeda from her home, join you via this live stream service on Facebook. But in the future, I think we'll be able to get it together. But so anyway, today I'm your speaker, and so I'd like to follow in our Mother's Day tradition and share just a little bit about my own mother. My mother's name was Mari. And so, I know some of you are thinking, wait a minute, that should be Madi. But actually, I want to clarify that, everyone except maybe my mother's first generation Issei mother, and maybe her more traditional older sister, everyone other than those two called her Mari, not the Japanese pronunciation, which is Madi. And so Mari is a pronunciation I used, although actually I just called her mom, so I didn't really worry about that. But, she had a very hip younger sister who was like the wild one in the family. This younger sister worked as a publicist for Hollywood celebrities, and she definitely always called her older sister Mari. But anyway, my mother was a Nisei, a second generation Japanese American. She was born in Oakland, and she attended Mills College there in Oakland until her studies were interrupted by World War II. And then during the war, her parents and her two sisters were all interned in the Topaz internment camp, which is in Utah. And, like most Nisei, I think I've met many Nisei through the temple and also through funerals and memorial services that I've done. like most Nisei, my mother didn't talk about the camp experience very much. And I do remember one of the times that she did was this occasion when a new edition of Mine Okubo's famous book had come out. This book is still available. It's called Citizen 13660. Mina's book detailed what it was like in the Topaz camp. And I think my mother and father both knew Mina in the Topaz camp. And I think I was around 10 at the time. But I remember, sitting there and reading the book and my mother commenting on the illustrations as we read it together. And my father was from nearby Berkeley, but even though he was from a nearby city, the neighboring city to Oakland is Berkeley, but I think they actually had met while in the camp in Topaz. He, being from the Bay Area, was also, sent to Topaz. Those of you from the Bay Area know the Nisei and Issei in the Bay Area went to the Tanfran racetrack and then went to Topaz. And after they were released after the war, my mom and dad moved to Boston to get away from the very prevalent anti-Japanese racism that was on the West Coast. And to go to Boston, they had to be sponsored. And they were sponsored in Boston by the Unitarian Church. Then eventually they moved back to the West Coast and settled down in the Crenshaw area of Los Angeles. And for many years, my mother worked as an executive for the American Cancer Society. And let me see if I can share. So this is a picture of my mom, Mari, with our two sons, Dean and Kevin. See if do you recognize those action figures that they're playing with that sort of dates this back to I think the 80s. Those of you who are a little older might recognize those as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I believe. And my mother was a really very loving grandmother too, obviously. Here's a picture of my mom. I think this is probably maybe her birthday, maybe when she visited our house. And Mari passed away quite a long time ago in 2002 at the age of 84. Let's see if I can. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about my mother's influence on me. So even though it's been, about, or actually almost 20 years since she passed away, there's some things that I will definitely always remember. For example, throughout my childhood, she was, like most Nisei parents, she was a very strong supporter of me getting a good education. And this was actually true, even going back to elementary school when I would, I hate to admit it, but not infrequently got in trouble in elementary school for basically kind of acting up, shall we say. And I think that, the proof of my bad behavior was that I was actually had the dubious distinction of being skipped twice in elementary school. Now, my educator wife, Diane, is very quick to point out that this was probably not because I was smart. It was actually, in those days, it was the easiest way to deal with students who were, less than ideal. And, I actually remember one time when my mother was called to school for a conference that, she was asked to come to school and have a conference with one of my teachers. This is a teacher who had made me sit in the corner more than once, I think. I don't remember my mother disciplining me at all, actually. I do remember, hating that teacher a lot. But I guess I could say that her love for me was, in fact, unconditional. But maybe she should have been more strict with me because I probably needed it. But later, after I graduated college, I think another example of her love was when I sort of, in some ways, you know, I guess you'd say I graduated college and I kind of threw my degree away to put it in a certain phrase, way of speaking, because I announced that I decided to become a musician, you know. And both my parents, you know, were executives, and my father's brother was a very successful dentist. You know, those are all very solid professions. But my mother never, you know, really questioned my choice. So my younger son is still, I think, aspiring to be a musician, and I have questioned his choice many times. But my mother never questioned my choice. Actually, as I think about it, maybe I was secretly hoping that she would try to talk me out of it, because, you know, looking back on those early years, there were many times as a struggling musician, you know, that I doubted my choice. But my mother never did. Actually, you know, I come to think of it, maybe she did have some doubts after all, because, you know, I remember maybe 10 years after I had decided to be a musician, and I was in this group, you know, some of you know the group Hiroshima, and Hiroshima had finally received its first recording contract in, I think, in 1979, and made the big time, so to speak. And I remember my mother saying to me at that time something like, "Gosh, Peter, if we'd have known you had musical talent, we would have enrolled you in music lessons." So I think that's a compliment. I'm not really sure. But in any case, you know, whatever doubts that she may have had about my choice or my talent or whatever, she never expressed them, and she was always 100% supportive. And when I was in Hiroshima, my mother and father attended every performance, a local performance of mine. But then, you know, around the mid 1980s, my father passed away prematurely, and I had left the group because I had this feeling that I needed to pursue a different musical direction, and I was kind of in this time period kind of wandering around between jobs and so forth. But eventually, you know, I began to teach privately, and I began to discover, or I guess you could say rediscover, something that actually had preceded, you know, my time in the group Hiroshima. And this was my love of jazz music. And I began performing in a small, very small coffee house in the South Bay area. And so this was definitely no longer, you know, the big time that I experienced as a member of Hiroshima. But my mom still attended those performances. And actually, you know, because the repertoire of jazz musicians is, in fact, you know, what we call the Great American Songbook, she may have actually, you know, enjoyed this music more, or certainly related to it more. I'm talking about the music of Gershwin, you know, Cole Porter, Jerome Kern, Harold Arlen, Johnny Mercer, Jimmy Van Heusen, Rodgers and Hart, and, you know, and then certainly film standards like those of the great Henry Mancini. This was the music that my mother had grown up with. I have many thoughts about my mother's influence on me, but it's kind of difficult to talk about them, because even though she passed away almost 20 years ago, I think a lot of these influences that I've thought about are really difficult to put into words. They're kind of more like a feeling. But one thing that I can say is that she did have a big influence on me becoming a musician. So as I said, you know, both she and my father loved the music of the Great American Songbook. I would say, though, that my father, you know, as a Nisei who had experienced the internment camp, I would say, you know, tended to gravitate more to what I would call the sort of intellectual or socio-political context that I think he saw the Nisei sharing with African Americans, the context of you know, having this collective suffering, you know, racist, being victims of racism. So I think he related to that aspect of jazz and blues music more. But in contrast, my mother, you know, really just appreciated the music as music. And so I remember her often singing along, you know, and you know, I think she had a very nice voice. especially when, her favorite, standards, jazz standards would come on, and Tin Pan Alley songs would come on. And, she always knew the lyrics by heart. So, and I think this influence of my mother is reflected in the fact that several times I've incorporated these standards into my Dharma talks at the temple. I've played songs like The Days of Wine and Roses, that's a Mancini song, On a Clear Day, and Darn That Dream. And I think my own love of these standards definitely, came from my mother. Actually, this, my love of this music was, I think in no small way, was the actual impetus for what I call my second career after having left the group Hiroshima, which is becoming an adjunct professor of music at Cal State LA. So I don't think any of you Betsy members remember this, but the very first lecture that I gave at the Betsy was in 2012 when I was the Ohigan speaker. And in a sense, I wanted to just mention one aspect of that, which is that this talk was centered around what it also relates to my mother's influence on me. So in 2012, I became the minister of West Covina Buddhist Temple, and which was actually my third career, but that all materialized because the Buddhist teachings had sort of come alive for me. In other words, I had this realization that all along I had this love for these great standards, these standards which are the core repertoire of all jazz musicians, and that this was something due to my mother's musical influence, but it had always been there, but that it had actually been hidden or dormant within me. And it wasn't until I began teaching some private students, and some of these private students wanted to learn how to play jazz, that I began to realize I'd never actually been a true student. I'd never actually mastered jazz myself. I'd never really committed to studying it. And so all along, even though it was dormant, that appreciation, that love of this music had been there, nurtured by my mother's own love. Of course, not only her love of jazz music, but her love of me, as her son, of course. And so, I think the parallel there is that, just as we say in Buddhism, the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, are always there, but we're not appreciating them until some cause and condition happens in our life when those teachings can come alive for us. But I could say, her love became my love. Of course, this illustrates the teaching of interdependence. And once I rediscovered my love of jazz, I went through a period of just incredible creativity. I wrote a book on jazz improvisation. I attended Cal State LA. I got a master's degree in music, and I became a faculty member there. And then, of course, the recession hit really hard in 2008, and the adjunct faculty were hit pretty hard, and I was one of the casualties at that time. But I still fondly remember that period in my life, and I think that all of these fortunate events would never have happened without my mother's influence. And so now, thinking about my mother's contribution to my life, I realized that this rediscovery of jazz, which I said, has actually also led to my interest in becoming a Buddhist minister, is due to my mother's own love of music and the unconditional support and love that she gave to me. So, just to kind of conclude my talk, I'm sure that, the story of my mother, is Mari, is probably, very different, or maybe a little different, certainly from your own mother's story. But I think there is something universal here. And I think what that is that, regardless of whether our mothers are living, or have passed on, our appreciation of them, our love and appreciation for everything that they've contributed to our lives only grows with time. And so on this occasion of Mother's Day, I think it's a really good time to reflect on and appreciate that everything that our mothers have done for us. And of course, they never really leave us. Even though my mother passed away many, many years ago, she's still, guiding me. And so this is my talk for today. Namo Amidavas, Namo Amidavas, Namo Amidavas. Well, so once again, happy Mother's Day, and thank you very much for joining us. And as far as announcements, as Kathy said, our temple remains closed. We're still in a wait and see mode. We've all been, I'm sure, following the governor and watching what some other counties, are doing, or in some cases undoing about the restrictions about staying at home and mandatory closures. But I think regarding restrictions, the restrictions that are in place, it was pretty clear that at least this past week, churches and temples are not included in this so-called phase 2 gradual reopening. So it remains to be seen when churches and temples will specifically be allowed to reopen. Just to let you know that our temple leadership, our board and ministers and office staff have been discussing this, and we acknowledge that we have, when the time comes when we are allowed to reopen, we have to make some significant adjustments to our hondo and to our services. Let's see, and as far as next Sunday, our Tanjoy service was, I think some of you know, was officially canceled a while back. So that would be next Sunday's service, but it will be another live stream service, but it will, of course, still be an observance of Shinran Shonin's birth. So please be sure to join us for that service, sort of a modified Tanjoy service, a live stream Tanjoy service probably from my home on May 17th. And finally, we all hope that you and your loved ones are staying safe and doing the best you can in these very difficult times. And I was going to point out that I noticed, probably you noticed also, that the phrase that we were using before, which was social distancing, has actually been replaced by some people with this other term, physical distancing. And I think that's a good replacement, because we actually need our social connections more than ever, even though we are much more isolated, or because we're much more isolated, we need our social connections even more, but we have to do that in a safe way, and we have to do that by maintaining physical distance. So I think that was why this phrase was changed. But anyway, we hope to see you all next Sunday, and please join me in Gasho. And I'm sorry, please join me in the Gata Ondok-san too. Embraced by Amida's great compassion, I respond with gratitude, dedicating my life. Embraced by my dear teachers and dear Dharma friends, I must answer gratefully throughout my life. Namo Amidavas. Let's see, are there any, before I end the service, are there any comments or questions? Oh, Thomas Bukaman, Nina, nice to see you. Toshi Hata, is that my son, Kevin? Actually, here. Cindy, Kathy, Mika. Jessica and Gary, Ming, nice to hear you. Makiko, happy Mother's Day to you also, Makiko, and all mothers out there. Let's see. Oh, Elsie, nice to see you. And all the mothers for joining. Yeah. And once again, thank you so much to Kathy Ikeda for sharing that very moving story. Actually, Kathy, you know, that if you're still here, that could have been the Dharma talk. You didn't really need to hear my Dharma talk. Yeah, going forward, we will definitely hope to, use this technology, this live streaming technology even more. And I think it will never, of course, replace our meet together in person in the Hondo, where we can not just, we don't have to fist bump, we could actually shake hands and maybe even hug each other occasionally. Well, maybe we can't hug each other, I don't know. But seeing each other in person and making face-to-face contact is something that, I think I miss. And as Kathy said, she misses also. But, there are people who, for whom, distance or, not being able to get here in person makes these live stream services the only way that they can participate. So for those people, certainly, whether you join us in person at the temple or online, we're very, grateful to have your company. With that in mind, I guess I will end the service for today. And so once again, thank you and happy Mother's Day. Please enjoy the rest of the day. Namo Buddhas.